out of nowhere, just out of the sky, a King Air drops down and lands on the dude's driveway. And I was like, yeah, that's what you do in Texas. You end up turning your driveway into a runway because no one cares, and also who's going to stop you?
All of a sudden, the door opens up, and he's like, something hit me. And they're like, you hit what? No, something hit me. I was driving along, and all of a sudden, bam, right in the shoulder, and it was like, then it flew away, and it's bad.
It's a King Air.
Right.
We all know there's a certain way that dishwashers should be loaded, right? Where the cutlery goes in and where the plates and the bowl. There's a proper way of doing that.
Right.
And don't mess with my way.
Okay, welcome to It's Not the Car. This is a podcast about racing and people and stories and the ties that bind us all together. The stuff we talk about is a lot like the Force in Star Wars, except, George Lucas isn't retconning anything, which is great because on this show we believe a bunch of things, but chief among them are the parallel notions that love is love and, Han shot first. Now, today, this episode isn't the usual. Today's show is something you guys have asked for, actually, over and over, but we'll get to that in a minute. My name is Sam Smith. I have spent most of my life as a journalist and writer, testing cars and race cars and going on adventures to answer questions and sometimes nearly dying in far-off places. Hi, Ross. How are you?
I'm good. I'm Ross Bentley, and I've nearly died in far-off places as well, come to think of it, through a few decades. How many, like, what do you think of when I say few decades? Do you think like decades? 2 or 3? Three?
I don't know. Okay. You're like 25 years old, right? You're not that old.
Way more than a few decades of hanging around motorsport and cars and driving and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And almost dying a couple of times. I should tell you about the time I almost died in China, but okay.
See,
later.
This is the different thing, right? Like all the times I almost died because it was very stupid, and all the times you almost died, you're doing something very cool. So, Hi, Jeff.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm just frowning.
Are you sure now?
I was trying to think of times that I almost died, and thankfully, I don't have any of those events on my list. So
we've just proven Jeff is smart. Jeff is the only smart person on this podcast. Hang up now. The call is coming from inside the house.
Yeah. Actually, I'll take that back. I did an 80-mile enduro through the Texas desert and the rocks and stuff on my 450 motorcycle after having not done any motorcycle riding for like 15 years. And at the time I stopped, I was okay as a cross-country and enduro rider. And then 15 years later, I thought, how hard can that be? I'll just jump on the bike and I'll go to an AMA National. And
yeah, makes sense.
That weekend, I almost died. That's
what I'm curious. Every time I get on a dirt bike or a motorcycle after being off one for a long time, the thing that ends up hurting, in addition to literally everything,
I was going to say your body.
Like, yeah, all of me. In addition to literally everything, what ends up hurting is thighs and calves. But did you fall off a lot, or did you just ride so badly that everything hurt, and also the bike beat you up and it hurt too?
All of those. I fell off a lot. It beat me up to death. One experience. So at an AMA Enduro, I don't even know how that happened. Anyway, they start the pros. I was not obviously in the pro class, and you show up and there's 18-wheelers with Husky and KTM and Suzuki, and they have their 18-wheelers, and it looks like the motocross trailers, with factory mechanics and all that stuff. And I showed up with my like lawnmower trailer on the back of my pickup truck and unloaded my bike, and there we went. Diane was my crew chief for the gas stop and stuff. And at one point, I come whipping through like a washed out old creek bed, and I'm just trying to stay on the bike, and then it turns and goes up this hill with, on the right side is the straight sheer cliff. On the left side where your tires go is a little ledge about just wide enough for a motorcycle. And I'm trying to go up this thing so the handlebar doesn't hit the right side, and I'm trying to go up it. And suddenly these guys with really low numbers on their number plate, like I was 4 digits and these are like 2-digit guys. And I'm like, these guys are like the pro guys. I don't know why they were behind me. They must have been on a different loop anyway.
You were very
they
good.
Were
lapping you, right?
It was because you were very good. I refuse to believe anything else.
Definitely not that. And I finally ended up, a guy tried to pass me on this little ledge, and I leaned over to the right to try to let him go by on the left, and my handlebar caught the ledge, and I just stopped, like embedded in the ledge. And for the next 5 minutes, I was the berm for these pro guys. They would come through, they would hit the side of my bike on the rear wheel and just gas it and launch off up the hill using me as a berm. And I was well, that was it. And then finally there was a break and I could get it going and go again. But, that was a disaster, that one. So yes, I almost did die multiple times in one day.
So speaking of potential disasters, again, today's show format is a new one. We call it, I literally made this up, not because I didn't know what else to call it. We call it the INTC Tangent Hour. And this is, if you haven't noticed already, this is where we go off topic, which means I have a confession to make. This show is, you ready for this, guys? This show is my fault. About a year ago, when I sat down with Ross and Jeff to brainstorm the thing that would become It's Not the Car. Actually, it was more than a year ago. Wow. Well,
actually, Sam, I was thinking about this. Where it really, really, really got hatched was when the three of us finally got together at Petit Le Mans in 23. So a year and a half ago.
Right.
Yeah.
God. This is how you get older. It just happens and no one tells you or creeps up on you. So in that whole conversation, a lot of what Ross and Jeff asked me was like, well, what do you want to make? What do you want to make? How's it work? And the one thing they were kind enough to give me a lot of power in this thing, which, was their first mistake. But the one thing I didn't want to make was a rambling chat show about current events in racing and our lives. And there's nothing wrong with that sort of thing, right? There's a lot of those shows out there. It's just that I wanted to make something else. And then what happened was we did this thing for a full year, one episode a week. We put a lot of thought into it. And it turned out that people actually liked what we did, which was super cool. And after a while, on the air, I kept mentioning these little off-air chats that Ross and Jeff and I had. And we have them all the time, before the show, sometimes after the show, and sometimes over text. And a bunch of you started writing in or DMing and asking where you could hear more of that. And I tried to tell some people that, we are, all three of us, to a man, giant nerds. And it's not that interesting, but you kept at it. So we figured, hey, why not? If it's awful, we'll never do it again. But for now, it gives me an excuse to, and I've always wanted to do this, crack a beer. And that's where we are. So we're taping this on a Friday night because we are very, very cool and have very busy social lives. And I'm going to go randomly here as I'm pouring this thing and say, Ross, what the hell happened in your week as I dump beer on my desk?
Cheers, Sam.
Cheers.
Cheers. What happened this week? The highlight of my week was when I got a message from a friend saying, hey, your website is completely down. If you go to your website, there's a blank screen.
Shameless plug. Speedsecrets.com.
But it is back. For about 3 hours or so before tech guys and web guys could fix it. And I still don't understand what happened. But that was pretty much the best part of my week. So you can imagine what the rest of my week was like.
You should call George Kurtz and get CrowdStrike to get on. Was it a cyber attack?
No, it wasn't. It was. Well, here's the cool thing. Sam, you mentioned a while ago that this whole thing is your fault. And what was really cool was, so I have this web guy that helped rebuild my site last year. And I have a tech guy that deals with all the problems that come with websites and e-commerce sites and stuff like that I have. And the two of them started working on this, and both of them said, it's my fault. And the other guy goes, no, it's my fault. So I finally said, guys, it's my fault. You asked how my week was.
I had to burp, so I muted the mic, and then I unmuted at the wrong time and nearly choked on my own burp. Wow. I have manners. I'm talking about it on air.
Wow.
This is why I shouldn't be allowed to drink in front of a mic. Yeah. Okay, so that was the best part of your week. Jeff, what was the best part of your week? What'd you do?
Actually, what's cool for me, the best part of my week is as you guys know, I've been working on a solar system, I guess, on my house here in West Texas. And we put up 32 big solar panels on my roof, a big giant inverter, 2 giant batteries. And I'm trying to run my whole house off of solar.
Cool.
And I got that 75%. The cool part is, though, I got this little app thingy that tells me exactly how many watts my solar panels are putting out into my inverter, how many my inverter is putting into my house, how many the grid is putting into the house, or if I'm making more solar than I need, how many watts I'm selling back to the power company. And I can look at it real time. And now that's all I watch. So I don't do any work. I just watch my watts going in and out and back and forth. And I'm nerding out on solar and how all of that works. And when the air conditioner kicks on, I hear it turn on and I look at my app. How many watts? Are we doing it all on solar, or am I having to buy it from the power company?
See, I love this. And I got this impression like very early on when I met you, but I also love that like your sons both allude to it, like Ross has alluded to it. The fact that like Jeff Brown finds a hobby. Jeff Brown goes all in. Jeff Brown makes that his entire life for a chunk. And then they're like, cool, Jeff Brown needs a new hobby. And like it goes deep. Like at one point we were talking about espresso, and like then we started talking about whiskey, and it turned out that like not only had you gone down the coffee rabbit hole, roasted your own stuff, started selling it, but then you aimed the camera at a shelf above your desk and there were approximately 3 million bottles of random, really cool looking brown liquors. And it's just, I love that now you're like, the world will be solar and everything is power.
Well, and I was going to say, Jeff, most people put in solar panels in their house to save energy and save cost. I'm pretty sure for you, it had nothing to do with that. It was just like, oh, here's a cool, I get an app. And yeah,
I get an app, and I can control it too. So if we also have a generator hooked up to it. So if the solar's not putting out enough, good thing about living in West Texas is there's freaking sun here, like a lot of sun. And so it puts out a lot. But if it's not putting out enough, I have 2 batteries that can, like at night, I'll run the house off the batteries, and the solar will have charged it during the day when we're not using as much as the solar panels demand. Or as the solar panels can put out.
How many AAA batteries do you need to do that?
Wow. Oh, these things are like, I don't know. There's like a zillion in each one of these. They're lithium ion batteries. And I would say, when I say battery, you think of AAAs, or you think of, a big battery like in your car. This thing is 18 inches wide by a foot thick by 4 feet tall. And I've got 2 of those, and they weigh whatever it takes a engine hoist to lift the thing up and put it up against the house and bolt it to the house. I mean, you can't lift it. Really big. And so the cool thing about it, they're lithium ion batteries. They have heaters built into them. So if they get too cold, they automatically turn on and heat. The other cool thing is, they have fire extinguishers built in the battery pack.
What kind of, if they're lithium ion, what kind of extinguishers are they?
I don't know.
That's super cool.
Lithium ion battery fire extinguishers.
But no, that's the whole thing, right? Like those things are notoriously hard to put out. I mean,
right. It's built in. I thought this was pretty cool because we've all seen the e-bike battery, poof, and it burns the whole guy's house down. Or we've seen the laptop batteries catch on fire and they burn. So this thing has 4 fire extinguishers built in each one of those packs I described. And if it gets, I don't know what sets it off, but I've seen pictures on YouTube of how that thing works, and it puts it out. I thought that was pretty cool.
I think
that's super cool.
I'd rather than an extinguisher, I just want an alarm to say, run, get away.
Run away. Luckily, I live in a steel building, and there's a steel wall and some other steel walls between the batteries and me. So probably not too dangerous, but it's fun to, I don't know. Yeah, I like the tech, and then we can start, I can make more solar than I need and then sell it back to the electric company. And anyway, it's fun to play with. I'm just getting into it, how you manage, like at night, instead of using power from the grid if I wanted to, if my batteries ran low and I still needed power, I could have the generator start up automatically and charge the batteries rather than use power from the grid. Or I could just say, I'm using power from the grid and not start the generator.
Are they
so it's
gasoline or diesel generators? Propane.
Yeah. So I have a propane tank out that supplies my furnace and my water heater. And then we just tapped into the propane tank and the generator will run off of propane. So I have 500 gallons of propane. Right.
So how
there.
far? So wait. So like I've always pictured your place. I think you've talked about it. Something up on the mesa. Like I mean, it's out in. Is it technically West Texas? It's.
Yep.
How far are you from civilization? How much of a problem is it to be something grid, something septic tank? Like, well, how does all that? How deep in the not? I mean, there's no Texas.
They're
woods,
deep in the woods.
Deep in the woods. Yeah.
Our closest paved road is like. Well, they actually put down this kind of like gravelly stuff that they sprayed oil on. It's kind of paved, but if you don't count that, the closest paved road is 6 miles away from our house. Our closest grocery store, like if you wanted to go to an actual grocery store, is 20 miles. The post office is 10 miles away. And that post office in that zip code delivers to 60 addresses, 60. That's it. That's the whole zip code. And it's 10 miles from our house.
And your nearest neighbor?
Nearest neighbor, 3 miles.
Yeah.
And they live on another 100-acre section. So in a 600-acre, it's called a section in Texas, which is 640 acres, which is a mile by a mile. In the one section, there's 4 people in 640 acres, 4 families.
I had no idea just how big like certain reaches of Texas were until I drove through them. And I guess it was in college. And every time I go through it, there's that whole thing where like the first time you drive across the state, east to west or west to east, you get like a day across it and you realize you're only halfway there or, 3/4 of the way there.
Yep.
And I think I didn't really understand the whole Texas ranch thing until I think it was like 2011 or 2012. It must have been 2012 because it was the first Formula One GP. There was a Ferrari-backed party way the hell out in the middle of nowhere at the rented house of some dude who had more money than Croesus. And as we were sitting there, we drove was ferried out there with somebody else, and like you line up and there's this big long driveway and you get to the end of the driveway and there's like, Ferrari F1 cars, and there's a big house and it's full of people. But the driveway was a lot longer than it probably could have been or should have been. And it was a lot wider. And as we're driving in, I'm looking at it going, there's something you could do with this. What are those markings? And then I saw weird little lights on the side of the driveway. And we got to the house, and I didn't think anything of it. We got to the house, and I'm sitting there like I had some strange cocktail and was, in one hand and a Lone Star in the other, and was sitting and then just looking off in the distance, and I saw these lights waggling in the sky. And somebody walked out and shut down, like pulled cones out in front of the driveway. And I heard this really familiar noise because when I was younger, my dad was a private pilot for a bit. He was a CFI and instructor for a bit. But I heard this really familiar noise from my childhood, and I couldn't place it. And it, out of nowhere, just out of the sky, a King Air drops down and lands on the dude's driveway. And I was like, yeah, that's what you do in Texas. You end up turning your driveway into a runway because no one cares, and also who's going to stop you because it's big. Right?
Or a go-kart track.
Well, we don't have a runway, but the go-kart track right out the back door has been there for 20 years now and still there. And so you can open up our building is 40 feet wide by 185 feet long.
Oh, cool.
We built it a long time ago, and now there's a cool name for those. People call them barn dominiums. We didn't know there was a name for that back then. We just built a barn and lived inside of it. And so there's the house part. There's the super clean, shop, like meticulously clean shop part. Then there's the machine shop and the wash bay, and then there's the garage.
So that kart track, how big's the kart track?
About a third of a mile, a little over. Third of a mile, 18 feet wide.
It's got to be the first place Travis and Colin drove anything, right?
pretty close. I think we had done quarter midgets.
Okay.
When Colin was 5 and 6, we did quarter midgets. We didn't have the track. Then we were going to go karting. The problem was I was racing race engineering cars on the weekends. So we couldn't go racing on the weekends, right? Because I was busy trying to make enough money to buy groceries and do all that kind of stuff. So we built the go-kart track on the property, and, literally 150 feet from the back big open garage door is the front straightaway. So you could prep the cars in the garage, kind of F1 style, inside, prep the cart. You could start them and he'd drive out of the garage onto the go-kart, onto the track. And so we could test, he could practice and all of that. The closest track to us is 240 miles away. So it wasn't like you were just going to buzz out for the afternoon and go run. And so we did that, and it got used for various things. We'd go to a national kart race and something wouldn't go right. Like I remember one time fouled spark plugs on the start, because you're going slow, and he fouled spark plugs. And so we practiced starts for, 3 or 4 days, going slow, getting your fingers on the jets on the carburetor to lean it out during the slow laps, to not let it foul up, to keep it right there, and then coming to the green, riching it up to exactly where you want it. And he's 8, but we're practicing this all the time so he gets that start right every time and doesn't foul the spark plug at the next race. And so we practice all sorts of stuff. We tested clutches. We had massive amounts of clutches. We tested chassis. We tested, different wheels. We tested, and Colin so for karting, it was great. We used that. We could go to the races then and be competitive with guys that were racing every weekend. And Colin was racing 10 times a year instead of 30 times a year.
That's so cool.
As he got into cars, we used it for stuff. I remember with the Daytona prototype, when he was doing that, those things were really hot. And we used to put him in like a snowsuit, like goose down snow pants and a goose down jacket, 110 degrees out in West Texas. And he would go out in the shifter cart and just run lap after he'd run for an hour straight, come in, pour gas in it, and run for another, 30 minutes. Just trying to get used to the intense heat. Going to Long Beach, we put up cardboard.
Jeff, and also ran at nighttime, right? Like with very little lights. Yeah, ran at nighttime for like crazy. No lights on the thing, and just using the moon and trying to guide he knew the track like the back of his hand, but just trying to guide yourself around there. He got hit by a bats a couple times.
Sorry, what? He got hit? What? Like in the head?
He came in one time, and he's like, he comes, because we can hear the cart running out there. And when it was running, Diane and I were always cool with it. Okay, good. And all of a sudden it would stop and be like, what's happened? And then all of a sudden the door opens up and he's like, something hit me. And we're like, you hit what? No, something hit me. I was driving along and all of a sudden, bam, right in the shoulder. And it was like, then it flew away, and it's bats.
The King Air.
Right.
Yeah.
So wait, how did you end up, how did you end up deciding what it needed to look like? Did you think about it? Because my instinct there would be to overthink it. Like, well, okay, look, we're going to have a mini Eau Rouge, which means I'm gonna need an earth mover, and then we're gonna have to dig a hole, and then there's gonna be a big long carousel, and all of it's gonna be fast and ballsy. And here is the place. We need at least 3 corners where you could die. And that would take me forever. How did you lay it out? Like, how did you make the call on what it needed to look like? Did it even matter?
More simple than that. We had the space, so we knew it had to fit in that space. Well, we have 100 acres, but some of it goes down a big ravine, and so we had the perfect size plot right out the back of the shop. And I was race engineering a guy at that time by the name of Fermin Velez. A lot of people probably know who Fermin Velez was. Famous Spanish race car driver, drove Ferrari, the 333 SPs when I engineered them. We won the IMSA championship together. Great guy, Fermin. He was staying with us, and we were talking about the track, and I had this old tractor, like if anybody's ever seen Green Acres, it was a tractor like that. You sat
Place to
outside
be.
and it had one of those spring seats and stuff. It was a jalopy, but it had like a blade on the back of it. And so for me and I went out and kind of walked around, and he's the race car driver, right? So he was like, okay, you should have this and this. And I said, okay, the turn should go like this, right? And he goes, no, you don't want the turn to tighten up at the exit. You want it to open up at the exit. So we designed the da-da-da. And so for me and I used a tractor, and we just dragged it out in this thing, and then we got on four-wheelers and we bombed around to see if it had the right flow to it, and then that was the track.
It's like all the stories about how, I don't know, I mean, about how, what was it, Tufty built Road America, or how John Fitch and What's a Doodle did Lime Rock, or God, what is it? What else is it? VAR. I mean, so many of the great places were built by feel, right? Just it needs to go here. Do this now. Right?
Oak Tree turn at VAR, the how they decided that radius?
No.
That was the tightest that whatever the bulldozer they
paving.
used. The bulldozer, that was the tightest turn that it could make. So that's how
So lock on the rack stop bulldozer.
Yeah.
And that's as tight as it can go.
Yeah. That's how Oak Tree got designed. So those are the best racetracks in the world. The ones that are designed by somebody with a CAD system where they're drawing out these perfect curves and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So
not as good. So anyways.
Yeah, what about COTA? COTA is, the people I talk to don't like it. It's horrible to drive.
That's a case of a track that was designed on a CAD system. And, there's some good parts of it. I always thought that Tilke must have gotten paid by the number of turns. So, because there's like 3 or 4 turns that don't need to be in that track. Now, maybe somebody's going to make an argument that, well, for Formula One, they needed to slow them down here or whatever. But there's a couple places where if they just kind of opened that up and made more flowing corners out of it, it would be even better. So,
yeah.
But again, it's another track that, it's not a bad track. It's fun, it's cool, all that kind of stuff, amazingly safe and all that kind of stuff. But there's nothing like the old tracks that two buddies and get out there on 4-wheelers and whale around, or with a bulldozer and go, this looks right.
Right. Have you ever driven COTA, Sam?
Yeah. Actually, an odd amount, a bunch actually. And it's one of those places that I don't care for it much, mainly because I don't know. I like proximity. I like some sensation of, travel and scale, like all the things you get out of, and it has nothing to do with a big track or small track thing, right? Like all the things you get out of a Road America, you don't get out of COTA, and you don't get a fraction of that out of COTA, and COTA is larger by a significant factor, right? There's something about the place. It's all the things that, and I've been on Tilke tracks that push emotional buttons. There's nothing there that hits me. There are a couple of neat corners in it, but it's what do I know? The first year, it's funny that same year with the Kinger, I remember I was there with Road and Track, and we were interviewing a bunch of drivers and a couple of team principals and just random people who were there who had a bunch of experience on other F1 circuits. And a lot of the drivers were grumbling because it was kind of dull, and they weren't grumbling because it was dull in ways that you'd think. It was all grumbles because, what was it? It was something like, well, this is like the Maggotts-Beckett's complex. This is like this at X track. This is like that at Y track. It's all stuff they'd seen before, and there was no flow to it, and they didn't. It's so funny because it's not. You'd think it's all Tilke, and you'd think it would all be like, well, this person or this situation, but there's so many more factors than that. It's so complex.
I actually think COTA got better as it got bumpier.
Yeah.
Because it added character. And, you had to kind of think about the line you were taking through the corner, because like at first, when I first drove COTA, it's like, there's one way to get around this place. But then when the bumps came in, you went, well, this car handles that bump okay. I can still run that line. This car now I'm driving doesn't handle that bump. So you got to start changing that. And to me, the great corners, there isn't like just one way to do it. You've got to figure it out. And that's
that's why Sebring is so good. We're going to Sebring in whatever. I've been working on the Sebring prep all week, and next week too. And man, I love Sebring because, because it is bumpy, because it is hard, because it is challenging, because it does get bumpier and it does change. And
every time somebody starts, every now and then you hear this little, they're thinking about repaving Sebring. No, like every race driver in the world that's ever been anywhere near the place would just, we'd all show up, and if the paving crew came in, we'd stop them, put up a human wall of people and say,
like one of those protests.
Yeah,
things,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. We'll be marching through the town of Sebring with our big placards and signs and everything. And so,
save the track.
Yeah. Keep it bumpy.
Right, keep it bumpy. Well, the respect the bumps is kind of like their tagline now. So they've bought into the whole thing, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
When do you head out for Sebring? When do you get on the bus?
So I can't. Let's see. Not next. Yeah, the end of next week, I'll fly to Charlotte, pick up the motorhome, and drive to Sebring.
So you were telling me, you were saying last time we talked that I thought this was really cool that the AWA guys retired the car you guys won Daytona with. So you're going to Sebring with a new car, a new tub?
New car. We've tested it already.
Cool.
So we had the car that we were running, that we ran all last year. Then we bought another car because we won that Aiken Award and can go to Le Mans. And the logistics just don't work out because 3 days after Le Mans ends, we have to be running our car at Watkins Glen.
But it's only a 6-hour race. So. Come on.
Right. But yeah. So you really need you got to have two cars. So we bought another car end of last year, and was our quote Le Mans car. And so that one we had already started, the guys had already started to prep. They had wrapped it, they had gotten, when you get a brand new race car, even though Pratt & Miller shakes it down and does a lot of, commissioning of the car, like it's ready to go. Race teams it's just the thing. You take it apart, you check everything, you put it back together the way you like it put back together. So our guys had done all of that. That was kind of just sitting there. And then Ori, Vidani, and Carlo, his dad, decided to retire the 24-hour winning car and keep it in the exact same condition. All the dirt, all the tire marks, both mirrors broken off of it, like we talked about, the dive planes busted off, the scrapes on the door, all the guys started, once they found out they were going to do that, they would push it in the same spot as people had touched it before, so as not to wipe any of the dirt off of it anymore, because it needs to stay in exactly the way it finished. So yeah, we retired that car. Its latest thing was it was the centerpiece of the GM display at the Toronto Auto Show the last 10 days or whatever, which was pretty cool. GM has a big display there, and it was like the centerpiece of in Toronto, which was quite an honor for AWA and Ori and the whole team. So that car's gone away. So we took the Le Mans car and went to Sebring and tested it at the IMSA test a week ago, 10 days ago, whatever, and shook it down and everything. So that's now our race car for the rest of the year in IMSA. And then we bought another car to go to Le Mans with. And so that's in the process.
How different, I know it varies from manufacturer to manufacturer and series to series and things like that, but how much repeatability is there and carryover is there in setup between, in that case, like two Pratt & Miller C8s? How much is it, the old thing, like the old NASCAR thing, like, no, out of the 50 chassis we ran this year, this is the good one. This is the one Jeff likes. Like how different do they end up being?
Those cars are the same. You can bolt the same setup on it. And it's so precisely made that,
makes sense.
The differences are kind of the little things that our team did, or something that just didn't. For instance, I'm not giving away any secrets. We went there with that car and the air conditioning didn't work. And the way we run these cars now, you'd have to have air conditioning because we're not running cool suits or anything. And it's even mandated, homologated. So air conditioning, and we had to figure out, was it the compressor? Was it a line that was not that was leaking or whatever, So there's those little niggling things. The guys figured that out. The seats now are so much the same that the drivers can use their same inserts from the other car. You want to position the pedals the same. You can just make those measurements. And I won't say that a driver, if you had them two side by side, that they couldn't tell the difference, but boy, it'd be hard to really notice a difference. And out on track, setup wise and suspension geometry, pickup points and aerodynamic positioning of the aerodynamic surfaces and stuff are so accurate now. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I remember when chassis would flex enough that you could get one that flexed more than another one, but not anymore.
No, it's like, that reminds me, I heard talking with Clay Milliken, who we've had on the show before. I mean, they don't have any suspension on a top fuel car. The chassis is the suspension, and they wear them out. It's like, I don't know what the number of races is, but I don't think they run. I'm virtually certain they won't run the same chassis all year, because how it puts the power to the ground changes as those chassis flex and wear out.
And they probably get maybe 10, 11 minutes on a chassis then in a year.
Oh,
wow,
God,
because
if you think about it, I don't even know. Yeah.
I mean, how many runs they do in a year?
Probably run under 2 minutes on a weekend.
Do karts still? I know karts at one point for a long time karts were hardened, right? Like they definitely changed still. Like nobody's fixed that, right?
For sure. Yeah. We used to go through that, and sometimes you'd like a softer chassis because based on the track and you can adjust them. Some of them are 4-rail karts. On the left-hand side, there's, the 2 main rails. And then on the right-hand side where the engine is, you have a second inside rail for the motor to bolt to, and that stiffens it. But you can run a second inside rail on the left side too. You have 4-rail karts stiffer than a 3-rail kart. And then you got 30 millimeter tubing, 32 millimeter tubing. Man,
what was the
stuff.
hour? What was the life of a kart frame in hours when you and Colin were karting? Like before it started to go off and get slow.
I don't know if we did it in hours. You could start to know, he could start to feel it when it was getting soft, because it would need different axles, or it would need different hubs, or it would need, to get the stiffness back where we wanted it. But I think we ran we used to run 4 classes, sometimes 5 classes a weekend. So we'd bring 4 chassis. And so, a year, we'd sell them off after a year. And if we did good enough, you could sell them off for some pretty good money, because this was the national champion chassis. And people thought that actually is why we won the national championship, because we had a special chassis and they could now buy it for the same as a new one. And we were like, yes.
I don't know, man. Ross, what else is going on in your week? What have you been doing?
Usual.
Every time I talk to you, you talk about how building your porch has become like both the best thing and the bane of your existence. Like how...
Oh, well, yeah. I mean,
did you say building is Porsche? I thought he had a Lotus.
No.
Porch.
Deck.
The man's name is Porch.
Yeah.
Ferdinand Porch.
Okay.
He had many porches. That's why they call
I actually enjoy doing yard stuff and house stuff. Like it's every day almost I look out there and go, can I go build a fence or something? Like just I want to do something. I love that part of it, and that's why I like tinkering with the Lotus too. Is like, yes, I love all the other stuff, the coaching and the writing and all that kind of stuff, but something about getting your hands dirty and being able to look at it at the end.
I hate yard work. Oh,
and
it's fun.
It's good exercise.
Yeah.
And
I'm sorry, did you just say it was fun? Yeah. I come from a long line of people who have despised yard work and figured out ways to get out of it. My dad always used to tell this story about my grandfather, how he saw him mow the lawn once his entire life. And he later asked him about it. And he was like, well, if you do something badly enough once, you'll never get asked to do it again.
Right.
And he told me that. I just was like...
Yeah.
Okay. That's every time I mow the lawn, I think about that, and I just want to smack myself for still being the guy who mows the lawn.
That's like loading the dishwasher. And we all know there's a certain way that dishwashers should be loaded, right?
Yep.
There's a certain way where the cutlery goes in and where the plates and the bowl. There's a proper way of doing that.
Right.
And don't mess with my way.
I was going to say, all I know is that everybody who comes to my house does it wrong, and they need to never touch my dishwasher again.
Yeah.
But also, like, I have a lot of rules, and most of them, as my wife will tell you, like, most of them are terrible, and no one should ever listen to me about anything.
What's your most terrible rule?
Ross, we don't have enough time. It's got sub-clauses. It's got, most of it just comes from like the fact that for the longest time I had a hard time remembering where I left things. And if I set things up a certain way in my house, that meant that I always knew what they were. And I don't know. I mean, you let all that stuff go when you get married and, have kids, and all of a sudden your entire life gets set on fire and all of your nice, neat little ways of organizing your life go out the window. So, in my head, most of the rules just exist for me, and they make me happy. And then when, everything goes terribly and none of them get met by other people, I just think, well, okay. And pour myself a beer.
But my dad had this thing about, he used to say, be careful what you're good at. And I was like, when I was a little kid, I was like, no, I thought you wanted to be good at all sorts of things. And my dad explained the story. I'll explain it real quick. He was in the Korean War. Well, not really in the war, but he was in the Army during that wartime. And he had to go to basic training in the Army, like everybody does. So he went to basic training, and they did all the stuff, that you see on TV, the swimming through the muck and doing all the packs and stuff like that. And one day was machine gun day. And they had those machine guns, the ones with the tripods on them and that you held with a big belt that feeds the shells in.
Yeah, the cool ones.
Yeah, the cool 50 caliber Browning, 50 caliber thing. And so he's there. It's his turn to do the machine gun, and he gets up there and and he's like hitting bullseye after bullseye after bullseye. Like he's really good at this, like better than all the other guys in his whatever platoon or group or whatever it was. So that night they're sitting around the barracks, and their sergeant was was in World War II and fought in World War II. And those guys, his buddies, are saying, yeah, Brown, you're really good at those, at that machine gun. And that's really awesome, man. I couldn't be that good. I don't know. How do you do it? And, he's explaining his technique and stuff like that. And the sergeant butts in. He goes, you guys know what the average life of a machine gunner in World War II was? And they're like, no, about 30 seconds. The enemy targets that guy first because he can do the most damage. That sunk in. Next day was day 2 of machine gun practice. My dad said he couldn't hit anything. The thing was jamming. It was overheating. Bullets were stray all over the place. He was the worst machine gunner in the whole thing that next day. So he said, be careful what you're good at. It's kind of like having a CDL driver license to drive the truck at a race team. You never tell anybody you have a CDL and can drive the truck, because you will be driving the truck.
Yeah.
Be careful what you're good at. And some of us just solve that by being good at absolutely nothing. Or in the case of journalism, being good at a thing that's impossible to monetize. Ayo, zing. Yeah, man. Ross, I don't know, have you touched the Lotus lately?
I have. I've been tinkering with it. Let's see what I have one more bigger project. I'm doing my, winter time. It's up on blocks. I crawl underneath. I just, if I have got 15 minutes and need something to do, I'll just go down and lay on the garage floor and look up at it and nut and bolt things. But I have one big project is the gas gauge last year started being inaccurate. So
Lotus.
It's probably,
Lotus.
It may be the last piece of Lucas on that car.
I was just going to say, I bet it's a Lucas gauge.
It's actually a Smith gauge, so maybe it's not Lucas. I don't know. Unless
we're terrible.
Maybe it's the thingy in the tank that's made by Lucas. I don't know. There's a wire attached. That's all I know. And
oh boy,
in my world, anything with a wire attached to it is a problem. And if, to me, the person that I hate most in history is the person that invented electricity. Whoever created electricity. Sorry, dude, I don't like you because you cause problems.
Literally every part of your job and life is made possible by the guy who figured out how to make the sparky, vibraty stuff that can kill you.
Yeah, okay.
Not kill you and also do things. Like, that's what we're doing right now. So that's why? Because, why, Ross? Why?
Because I've had more electrical things cause problems in my life. We mentioned at the start of the show about cheating death. That was what. Yeah, one of the things that had me spending time in ICU.
What?
Well,
you were shocked almost to death?
No, the electrical. Well, it was an electrical thing that triggered that lit the fuel on fire. That
the indie thing, yeah,
that thing,
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I've had, and I've just had more things like probably many people, driving along down the road and there's a problem. It's probably an electrical thing. So
see, I don't know. Like, I didn't understand electricity at all until somebody sat me down and tried to explain the water flow analogy, and then I understood electricity even less. And then another friend was like, no. Think about it like this X and Y and Z, like all these different metaphors. And at the end, we got to it. I looked at it and I realized that the only way it was ever going to make sense to me was if I just accepted that resistance was real and it was magic and the rest of it was also magic. And then, I don't know, these problems got a lot easier because, in the end, something works, or you replace it, or you stick a multimeter on it and ask a bunch of questions, or you hit it with a hammer. And that's basically how, I don't know, it's a metaphor for the rest of life somehow.
Yeah.
Maybe this beer was stronger than I thought. I'm not sure. Sorry.
I don't
carry on.
Yeah, I'm a mechanical engineer, and the electrical guys, I've figured out a way to be really good at electronics and have all my electronics work well on the race car, all my data systems and everything else.
Have somebody else do it.
Right.
Yeah.
I have the right guy next to me. Currently, I have Baptiste. It's like, oh, this isn't working, Baptiste, and he fixes it.
Yeah.
And so I'm really good at electrical stuff because I got this wizard sitting right next to me. I've always said, I'm a mechanical guy. If you have a pipe and there's water or oil, I don't care what, flowing through it, and I need to know about that, I can put a pressure gauge on it and read the pressure. I can snip the end off and put a 5-gallon bucket and time how long it takes to fill it up and know how much is flowing out. That's great. I snip a wire off and I can't see the electrons flying out the end of it.
Yeah.
I can't put them into anything. I can't weigh them. It's just hard.
And one other thing, Jeff, is that if that water coming out of the pipe, you could put your finger in it.
Right.
But touch the end of that wire. If there's something coming through it, that's, yeah. So I'm with you. Like, mechanical things make total sense to me. But I don't know. I understand electricity. I just don't trust it.
Ooh, interesting.
Because it's going to cause a problem.
So much.
Right.
I've learned so much, and not just that I'm going to go back and clip out the part of the show where Ross goes, you can put your finger in it, and then dial up a button on my laptop where I just push the button and it goes, you can put your finger in it. You can put your finger in it. I don't know. It's so funny how
every time I've stuck my finger into a light socket, like,
it hasn't gone well.
It hasn't gone well, no. And it's been a day or two now since I've done that. And
a day, only a day, really.
Maybe two.
It's my breakfast every morning.
Yeah.
God. I don't know, man. I'm the same way, and this is in no way to put me in the same camp as Jeff, because I'm not. But I'm a visual learner, and just the notion of, I don't know, like the first time, nothing about an internal combustion engine made sense until the first time I saw one apart, and you see crank throws and rods going up and down, and you're like, oh, it's a 4, and there's a piston and a piston and a piston, piston. 2 are up, 2 are down, and then this goes up and this comes back down, and it all kind of like, you have this galaxy brain moment. And there's never been a galaxy brain moment for electricity. And, I was kidding earlier, like, I understand some of it, but God, there's so much of it that is, I just want to be able to see it. Like, I just want to have electrons and tiny little bits and things going through my brain and be able to see what's happening.
So, and where it is with my Lotus is there's a gas gauge on the dash in front of me. There's a gas tank in the trunk, and there's probably some wire that goes along somewhere. And it's probably something in that wire somewhere. And who knows, that wire is probably wrapped around in something with about 18 other wires, all wrapped with electrical tape that somebody in 1969 in England wrapped up.
Right.
So how is that not going to be a problem, right?
That's bad. Well, apparently, and you may see this, Ross, I don't know, in the Lotus, but apparently inside those wires are smoke. Because I know some of my guys there's been like a poof, bzz, poof, and then smoke comes out, and the electrical guys say, oh, shoot, I let the smoke out.
Yeah.
So I think there's smoke inside of there somehow.
And
I don't know
and
how that works.
Here's the weird thing is that the gauge kind of works. Like, I like things that either work or don't work. Don't give me this, I'll kind of work part way.
Lotus. You bought a Lotus. You just said you like things that work or don't work.
Sam, you
bought a plastic car from a country known for questionable wiring and questionable grounds, where a man ran a car company and his entire philosophy was, I'm not going to finish this. And also, can we make it cheaper? And in the end, you basically signed up to mow the lawn for the rest of your life. How did this happen? How did you end up with a Lotus if you like things that work, Ross?
Sam,
Where did this come from?
You know the answer to that question is, when it works, it is so much fun.
Yeah. The one day out of 10 where you see the magic is amazing.
Come on.
I love it. It's great.
I've had my car for not quite 4 years, and twice it's like, I want to go for a drive. Oh, I can't drive it right now. I'm working on something. So I know I got to be careful here, but it has been surprisingly reliable. Now, I mean, as I said earlier, there's hardly any Lucas. Well, I don't think there's any Lucas Electrics left on the car. So,
I mean, to be fair, I grew up around a British car restoration shop, and the one thing I learned there is that the English have an affection, an affinity for electricity, but they also believe that like a wiring harness is something that needs to be maintained. A fuel pump is something that needs to be greased and adjusted. Like there's this whole philosophy that says you're supposed to poke it every so often, which is kind of how they approached Empire, I guess. But this notion that if you don't poke it and screw with it unnecessarily, it will die and leave you alone. And like when you do that, when you take care of those things, they could be very reliable. I mean, like setting aside all the Lotus jokes, like that I don't know. It can work,
and
right?
They've proven it. I mean, just look at the British auto industry today. How strong and
there's
brilliant.
So much of it.
Wait a minute. Hang on. Wait.
There's so much of it. There's so much of it. And it's such a shame because they're so very good at so many things. Damper tuning and wood finish and leather and Empire.
And you just described the shock absorber. Wood and leather, right? Isn't that how they used to make them?
I don't know, man. The one time I looked inside a friction absorber or what was it? Like a lever arm shock, like I think it was Girling that made them, like on old MGs. Yeah. It's like looking into a medieval castle. It's like you see the chains and there's a gate that goes up and there's the moat and there are weird things that live in the moat. And then somehow like a spring's motion slows down and the car works and it's magic, except it's not and it's designed to hate you.
And then you look at Formula One and you go, other than Ferrari, they're all there.
Right. Because the universe is made of mysterious answers and nothing is ever black and white, right?
Yeah. So, Ross, are you ever going to track day your car? Take it out and just like give her the beans?
No.
No?
I can.
You do that on the street enough?
Yeah. Jeff, you know the best car ever to drive on a track is somebody else's.
That day.
No,
somebody else's.
It's somebody else's.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. You're smart.
No,
You've been doing this long enough to know. Go beat somebody else's car.
Yeah, and I will say, I mean, the Elan is an absolute hoot to drive, but if I drive it on the track, I'm going to be bored with it. Like it's 56 years old, right? I
mean,
it would be fun for 2 laps, but I don't know. I want to drive something that is faster and stickier and all that kind of stuff.
I get it. That makes sense.
What I love about driving the Lotus is the connection you get with the road and the responsiveness and all this stuff. I'm not sure I've driven another street car that has that same kind of feel. And I've driven way faster street cars, way faster. But just that feeling of it's me and the road in this car, like it just feels that good all the time. So it's for me, driving the Elan on the road is something completely different. So if I took it to the track, it would be trying to compare it to something else. And
makes sense.
It doesn't compare there.
Yep. I get it.
There's also the whole thing where, there's something about, like Chapman famously was like, no, there was a bit of a Gordon Murray McLaren F1 thing about him, right? I guess Murray had a bit of Chapman about him where, road cars were designed to work as road cars. Race cars were designed to work as race cars. And if you built one to do one thing well, wouldn't do the other thing well. Yeah. It's not to say that, there weren't Lotuses that were turned into race cars that didn't work very well. But like the whole thing about an Elan is how tidy it feels and how, its limits, especially on the stock tires, like 155s, 45s?
55s, yeah.
On the stock setup, you can slide it within the width of the lane. Like you can work the thing and get to the limit of the tire, and it feels like you're doing something. And it's, I don't know. I know what you mean. There's something magical about those things on the road that just, you put on a big wide open racetrack, at least in stock trim. It's not that's not good. It's
Well, and I think
I'm going to go for something else.
I talked about it on another show, I think, where I drove a Lotus 26R race car on the track. And that was...
Which is the race Elan.
Yeah. I mean, Colin Chapman famously said the Elan will never build a race car version of it. And then so many people started modifying. Then he says, we can make some money off them. So let's start making... So they made a proper race version of that. And it was incredible how good it was. But it's completely different than a street car. And on a fun, twisty road that doesn't, and you don't have to drive super fast. The Elan is just a hoot drive on the road like that. But again, I put it on the track, and after 2 laps, I'm bored and said I want something faster.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah. So
we are about out of time, which means I should probably make the call that we have one more thing. We're going to talk about one more thing, because then we'll get another half hour out of this. But what's the one thing, Jeff? What's the one last thing?
I'm down to 22 watts on my solar panel. It's dark out here.
Oh, wow!
So now I'm having to buy 3,807 from the grid. We're talking about electricity. I don't understand it, but all I know is my solar panels don't appear to work. I'm looking outside. Yeah, they don't appear to work very good in the dark.
What?
Somebody needs, what the heck?
What
Nobody
the heck?
told me that.
Yeah.
Nobody
It's
told
a Friday
me that.
night.
Yeah.
It's a Friday night. We're very cool.
Yeah.
We sit and look at our solar panels in the dark on Friday nights.
Right.
We tape podcasts.
Yeah.
We're amazing.
Yeah.
So that's my one thing. Don't
Okay.
buy solar panels if you live in Alaska where it's dark all the time. It won't work.
Except the
All right.
summer.
Ross,
Then it works
Ross,
really
Yeah.
good, right?
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
it's light all the time.
What's your one thing, Ross? You get a one thing.
My one thing. I'm going to do something in the next little while here. I'm starting. Well, I don't know when this is going to air, but I'm going to do live chats while I sit and watch the IndyCar races and Formula One races, and through my Substack thing. And I'm just going to sit there because a couple of times I've had friends come over and watch a race with me, and they go, "Wow, it's just really cool because you've got some insights that other people don't." So I'm going to sit there, and if I see something, I go, Dixon got punted into the wall on the first lap, and he's in last place now. Just wait, he'll be on the podium before the end, because he will. Yeah. So I'm going to just type in my thoughts. People can ask questions. I'll read their comments and have a little community discussion on my Substack chat. I don't even know, chat something or other. The chatty, chatty thing.
Can I join in?
Please.
I might do that.
Yeah,
okay, I might do that.
Can you give me
I
some?
was watching practice today, and it's looks like it's going to be pretty good. The new, the new hybrid deals. The bumps now are way worse because of the momentum from the hybrid batteries and stuff. Rosenquist spun exit of 3, which is a real fast into 4, and he spun, didn't hit the wall.
Wow.
His teammate Armstrong spun exactly the same spot. McLaughlin crashed there because the cars are quite a bit different on the street course with the new hybrid batteries and stuff. The cool thing is, if you do spin and you stall, you can now start the engine with the hybrid, and you don't have to wait for the safety team to come out and plug you in and drive away again. So I might log in and join you.
Give me throw in a couple of really easy questions, and I'll answer. Okay. I'll answer saying, that would be a really good question. If too bad Jeff isn't on. So anyway, yeah.
I'll do it.
Sam, what about you?
Anonymous.
What about me?
Yeah. What's your one thing?
What about me? My one thing. I would like to point out the this is racing related. The glass of beer I've been drinking out of all night, you can only see it on YouTube, but it has the word beer on top of it, and then a very strange man in a hat making a very strange face. And that man is my friend Mark Francis, and he owned the BMW 2002 that I ran in vintage racing for a bit. Mark is a really strange guy. He but he's one of the best people I've ever met.
So he fits right in with us.
Sort of,
really
yeah.
strange guy. Yeah,
And
Not best.
I guess the answer
is strange.
yeah. The moral of the story is be ridiculous in your own way, and then when you find people who are ridiculous, I don't know, make special pint glasses to celebrate them. But anyway, I think that's a good 3 things. I think we're out of time, and I think that's our show. If you like what we did here and you want to see us do it again, write us an email. It's somewhere in the description of the show. Somewhere there's an address that ends in gmail.com. But if you don't like it, also let us know, because normally what we do is not this. And if this was terrible, well, don't tell me. That's fine. I don't want to know. I will mow the lawn instead. Anyway, it is time to read us out, and it's clear that I should never have beer in front of a mic before. Guys, should I read us out?
Go.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Okay. Maybe you want to down another beer before you hit?
No. I'm just gonna start and go until I'm done. So, which is not how I mow the lawn. It's Not the Car is written, produced, and rambled into life by 4 people who really ought to know better than to run a business at a loss just because it's fun. Mike Perlman is our executive producer. I'm the show's creator, and if you want to blame me for any of this or complain, all you have to do is, well, you have to go outside and aim for the second star to the right, straight onto a morning, and click your heels together 3 times. At that point, Roger Penske will appear, poof, like magic, and he will tell you that he has, despite all your hopes and prayers, not been watching your career this whole time, no matter what you hoped. And also, he hates to tell you this, but like the library book you forgot to return in high school, it's not way overdue. And you actually owe him money for the late fees, which is crazy, because like at no point in his long and storied career has the captain been anything like a librarian. But, since he bought the Speedway in Indianapolis, as far as I'm concerned, that means he basically owns half of America now anyway. So why not give him that late fee, right? I'm sure it'll get to the right place. And anyway, by that point, you'll be so much in shock from seeing a motorsport legend appear in front of you out of thin air, you'll have forgotten any problems you have with this show, which is correct because everything we do is perfect. Again, we don't make money doing this. It's actually the opposite. If you like this episode and you want to help us keep going, check out patreon.com/notthecar and click Become a Member. We also have a merch store and the show site at itsnotthecar.com. You can buy things there like silly t-shirts and coffee mugs and hoodies I made because I like making silly things. This pint glass. If you're enjoying the show, please leave a review and share it with anyone you think might enjoy it. Your recommendations make a huge difference, and they really do help us keep It's Not the Car on the air. As always, thank you for listening. And producer Mike, who came in about halfway through and looked at the screen and thought, what are they doing? This is not okay. They need to stop this. Thank you for your patience, Mike. You're amazing. Have fun.